Dear beloved, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about community. It's just going to be a little bit of casual conversation about community, and we're going to talk a little bit about building community and how community may look different than what we've always thought it looks like, right? So, first thing to recognize is that everyone's in the same boat, right? We all live in the same time. The people that are still alive and with us, we are all living in 2022, right? We're all living in this same post COVID world. We're still living in the same social climate as the next person. So the first thing to recognize is that we're all in this same boat together. No one is, maybe people are further along in their journey with community than other people, but it's not that they were born into any special circumstance or anything like that. We literally are all born in the same, we're all here, right? We're all in the same boat. The next thing that's really important to realize is that we are made for community, right? So we have this dichotomy with knowing that we're made for community, yet our culture today in our social culture, our economic social climate is a very lonely culture. So we see this need for community and this desire for community, this God given, hole in our heart for community, if you will, alongside this very lonely culture. And it's very hard to see why or how we can get from the lonely culture back into community and how we were made. Because community has existed since God created Adam and Eve, right? It was the way that God designed us. But somewhere we got caught up in progress and quote unquote making the world a better place, right? A lot of good ideas start off that way, by the way. But that actually left us a little bit more lonely because it started leaving behind what's really important. Starting to focus in on something, meaningful and impactful or maybe even helpful can sometimes lead us further from the big picture, right? And that is a little bit dangerous. But it's important to recognize that, again, like I said, we're not alone in this struggle. You are not alone in feeling alone. I am not alone in feeling alone. Literally everyone is in the same boat. And while that's not really like, oh my gosh, thank goodness we're all in the same boat. I don't mean that, but I just mean more so like we're all striving together. And we've kind of, as a culture, lost our ability to know how to be in communities, to know how to live in community. We've lost that ability as a culture. And so hopefully we can get back to that. One way that, the culture is trying to kind of repair their relationship with community is through social media, right? And at its conception, social media was a great way to keep in contact with your community who may have moved away or didn't live close by anymore. So, at its conception, it was a great idea. And I think at some level, it still achieves greater community. But in the modern sense, unfortunately, it gives the illusion of connection, and while having the occasional connection and community thrown in, right? So don't get me wrong, there can be amazing relationships and amazingly strong communities and connection that has been facilitated by social media. I will be the first person to stand up and say that social media is and still can be good. But to recognize that that is often the exception and not the rule anymore, which is a little bit sobering to think of, right? To think of we're spending all of our time, right? All of our extra time on social media to only potentially get a connection or to potentially connect with somebody, because most of the time it's kind of this illusion of connectedness that we do experience, right? Um, but one thing that struck me recently, and this past Sunday, I heard a homily that really stuck with me on this theme of community. He was talking about community in a lot of ways, but one of the things he said was that to have community, you need to lead people, you need to follow people, and you need to be walking arm in arm with people. And that kind of just like blew my mind in a way, not because I like didn't realize that this was true, but just that I have never heard it in that context before. But this threefold explanation of community makes total sense. We fall short of understanding community if we are so focused on only one of these components, right? For example, I mean, imagine, we're just talked about social media. So imagine, say, an influencer on social media. A lot of people can sit and watch them and think, oh, they must have awesome community. They have this community that they're leading. So therefore they must be fulfilled in that. And they must, their tanks, all of their tanks must be filled from that. But the reality is that if someone is only, say, right, an influencer or a leader, right, they're standing in front of people, they're helping people get what they want or whatever it may be, that's not the full extent of community. That's not going to fill up all of their tanks, right? That's going to fill up the leadership tank, sure. But what about, what our desire to be better? What about our desire to follow another? What about our desire to just live life with somebody? Like run errands with somebody or, you know, call them up or, like be a coworker with somebody. Like this is a need that we all have and a desire that we all have for community. And it doesn't mean that you're not leading well if you're still desiring these other forms of community. It just means that you're human because we all need all three of these, right? So this homily really helped me to see that there are different roles that each of us play, right? And maybe in somebody else's life. Um, we don't have community when we're only leading. We don't have community when we're only following. And although it is kind of, this is what we think about when we think about community, we don't have community when we are only walking arm in arm with others. Now, I know you guys know this to be true, but I'm hoping that saying it in this way may help clarify a few things for you and help you to realize what next steps you need to take in your own life for your own community. Because, like I mentioned, you can link arms with your friends, and that's awesome and that's so needed. Say, in college, for example, you can have the friends you're living with, the friends down the hall, the friends in the dorm next door, all of those things, and you're living life with them. You're going to the cafeteria, you're going to the same classes, maybe you're going to different classes, and then you meet up afterwards. Whatever that may be, that's living life with somebody, that's linking arm in arm with them. But when you have a fuller sense of community, you also have maybe older students who are taking you under their wing and you're learning from them. You go to them for advice or you go to them with just, problems or whatever, and they can help you be the best you can be. And maybe, you are that older student to somebody else, right? Maybe you are helping a younger student kind of figure out their way through college. Maybe you are helping them become the best version of themselves. Maybe you're being that accountability partner that tells them, like, listen, take responsibility for your actions and don't do that dumb thing again, right? We all need these people in our lives. And so when we think of community, I don't want us to just think of linking arm in arm with somebody. I hope that's clear. And the thing is that we're all at different points in our lives, right? Even those we're linking arms with can be ahead of us in a certain way, and we can be learning from them. It doesn't have to be so black and white that we can never lead or learn from somebody just because that isn't our normal role, right? So, for example, even somebody you're linking arms with may be ahead of you a couple years in just life stuff. Maybe you're coworkers, right? Maybe you're coworkers and you love living life together, but this person is married and you're not, and you're still single, right? So even though most of the time you are the linking arms friend, they are ahead of you in a life season that you're striving for. And so some things, they can be a leader to you and you can be a follower, and things like that. And maybe you have, a little bit higher achievement in your job and maybe they're looking up to you for that. Whatever it may be, like, we don't have to be stuck in whatever box, but I do think we need to seek out somebody for all of those roles in our lives. So that's the great thing about community, though, right? It comes up around each other and gives everyone what they need, right? Whenever we hear stories about community, or we watch a really moving news story or video or movie that the community comes up around an individual, it's always like so touching. And it's not only touching because it is, what's happening and it's beautiful for the people experiencing it, but it's also touching because I think we understand that that's something that we long for. That's fulfilling a need that we see in our own lives, in our own hearts, in our own souls, that we are saying, I want that. I want a community to come up around me when I'm struggling, right? When I have something happen to me, I want the community to come up and make me meals, or show up when I most need them, or show up just because, right? It's a desire that is in our hearts. And so when we see that happening, we are happy not only to see it happen, right, to those people, but we're also excited because we see the possibility that it's not just a feeling in our hearts that we desire it, but it's also like it can be a reality. It can be done, right? And so that's really beautiful and touching because then we know, like, that is possible, right? So I know this was kind of shorter, a little bit, just kind of casual, but I want to leave you with a question to think about as you're moving forward in your journey for community, right? And I want to leave you with the question of, who are you leading? Who are you following? And who are you linking arms with? And this, answers to these questions, they may come automatically and quickly. They may take a little bit more time, and you may even come up short of an answer. And that's okay. That is okay. But I do want to encourage you that if there isn't a great fit for someone in a slot right now, or if there's someone missing, that you intentionally seek out that form of community, that form of connection. Maybe, you realize you're not leading anybody, right? Well, look at opportunities around you to start doing that. Maybe, volunteer at your church to help with youth group, or to help with some young adult thing, or, whatever it may be. If you're in college, look for, younger students or whatever. Just be open to leading when somebody comes along. Maybe that looks like you taking a role on social media of being an inspiration, and not only being that inspiration, but explaining things and like how you've gotten to where you are. Sharing that for anyone who's following you, on social media, right? Things like that. Or maybe you realize you don't have somebody you really look up to who you feel open enough with where you can ask them anything, or that you'd be comfortable with them challenging you to be better, right? So maybe that means looking at somebody who can mentor you, whether it be somebody in your immediate community. Maybe it's, a mother who's, many years older than you in age and in life experience. Maybe it looks like reaching out to that person you've admired for a really long time and just asking them, hey, can you listen, I've been admiring you for a long time. Can we sit down and talk sometime? Like, can you mentor me? Being transparent and being open about what you need is the best and the first step towards any of this, right? And that's what's really going to help propel you forward. And lastly, if you find yourself like, yeah, okay, I'm doing a lot of volunteer work, I'm doing a lot of leading, I have a mentor, but I really don't have those like ride or die friends. Like, I don't have those people that I can call up and run errands with, right? Well, start looking around at the friends that you do have, right? Maybe that looks like pouring more effort and energy into those friendships. Maybe it looks like seeking out new friendships. Maybe it looks like, calling up that old friend again and reconnecting. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of different opportunities for you there. So yeah. And again, it's like I recognize that there's a disparity between the needs for community and what's actually happening in the world today. Like, I recognize that. And the only way that that's going to change is if we build up our own communities. So that's our task, right? Our task is to build up our own communities, not only for ourselves and to fulfill the need that we have for community, but also for the people around us to see that this is a possibility, to dream with you and to be inspired to start up their own communities, right? There's a new book by Jenny Allen called Find Your People. And it's about the need for community, but also it brings in the practical implementation that you may need to start building community. And I've been really enjoying this read, and it's been so inspiring to help me implement these changes in my own life. And I've been thinking for a while, since I've been reading the book, to kind of do a kind of like a book club couple episodes with this book, because not only is it like so spot on for our time that we need community now more than ever, but that it's a really awesome book in the fact that it has not only the understanding and the need for it, but also has the practical aspects, which, if you know anything about me or my brand, I'm all about both the intellectual and the practical, and them coming together to be really helpful. So for the month of July, on the podcast, we're going to do a book study of this book, and I'm so excited. So I invite you to go get the book and to join us here on the podcast so that we can learn and implement it together. We all need some accountability, right? And what better place to start that than by building community in the first place. So join me in July. We're reading Find Your People by Jenny Allen. I'll link it in the show notes so you don't have to remember the name. But again, it's Find Your People by Jenny Allen. And so we're going to, I'll post the reading schedule, but essentially we're going to do 4 weeks. So, and the book is split up into 3 parts. So the first week will be the first part. The second and third week will both be the second part. It's kind of long, so we'll split that in half. And then the last week will be part 3. So you have 2 weeks to go get the book and read part 1. And I cannot wait to grow in this season with you and to dive into learning how to build community together with you. Until next time.